Hello, YouTube, and hello, Mike Norman. I promised to respond to your video response to me about integral math, and so I'm doing that. I do think that the courtroom analogy that you make is effective. It works as an argument, I'll put it that way. The argument, as far as I understand it, that Mike Norman had presented was that you can't use authorial intent as a definitive basis for evaluating the meaning of a statement or a narrative, and he uses the example of a murderer or a potential murderer being put on trial in a courtroom and his testimony, and you don't want to get, if his intent is to exonerate himself, his intent either way is going to be that he wants to exonerate himself, but that's not that interesting. You want to get at whether or not he actually committed the murder, which is something that exists independent of his intent. I agree that that's an example within which authorial intent isn't that interesting. Another example that I've heard, and it's actually from a lecture that Rick Roderick gave on Derrida about this exact point, and I actually went back and rewatched it after over the past couple days with this thought, or with these thoughts on my mind. Rick Roderick points to the example of, if I write a grocery list and then I go out that day and I get hit by a car and I'm just killed utterly, then the words and symbols, or the symbols that I wrote down that compose the grocery list, can still function in my absence, in my radical absence at that. And then you can take that one step further and say, okay, well, what if I composed a grocery list first of all, the fact that the grocery list can function without my presence at all is interesting to the question of authorial intent. And even if I'm not there to intend, that is interesting in and of itself. Then he goes one step further and says something like, if I write a grocery list with the intention of getting my wife out of the house so I can invite a lover into my house, the meaning of the words that my wife gets out of it, get 2 cartons of milk, get this and that, none of that changes by the fact that my intention is in earnest. The fact that there's no change in the interpretation, and there's no reason at all to change the interpretation, just because my intention is not what it appears to be, is also something that destabilizes authorial intent. And something that I also really want to emphasize is that it's not, the claim that I'm making, and I think integral math doesn't quite understand this, the claim that I'm making is that authorial intent I'm not saying that it shouldn't be taken into account. I'm not saying that it's not that it's necessarily uninteresting, or that it can't help in shaping an interpretation, or something like that. I'm not saying anything like that. The fact that that I keep wanting to say Tolkien. The lady who composed the Harry, J.K. Rowling. That's it. The fact that J.K. Rowling came out and said that Dumbledore was gay, that's interesting, and it can be interesting for an interpretation. I'm not denying that. What I'm saying is that you cannot fix the meaning of texts based on authorial intent. Authorial intent is not stable enough to be able to do that. And I think it has a really dodgy conception of what it means to intend and what it means to, or to what degree we're actually able to convey something like that. I think it in some way, there's a theory of mind implicit in this that I don't think is tenable. But, so yeah, but your courtroom argument, and then also the fact that, if my intentions were intentionally obfuscated, or intentionally disingenuous, it doesn't actually change the meaning of the symbols. Those two arguments coupled together, I think, are probably some of the more powerful internal argument. Are both, like, cumulatively, they're a powerful internal argument. But again, I want to make clear that the argument isn't that authorial intent is moot. It's that you cannot fix the meaning of a text solely on the basis of authorial intent. Once you say that, then you're in a situation where there are quite a few standards that you can put into place. And I think I think this is trivial. And this is why I don't really have much of a reason, or I feel like, because the question as it was posed to me was a tactical one, like, do I think that it's stronger to present this? In other words, do I think it's stronger to present an argument that criticizes the logic of the primacy of authorial intent? And I'm not sure that it is stronger. I think I just can't see, like, in some way it's just such a stupid claim, and a dogmatic claim, that it would just be, like I said in the video that I just responded to Theo Warner with, like, it might just be more powerful, or the better argument might just be to point out that, like, literary critics have dismissed this idea for reasons, for lots of reasons, for good reasons, and that's a conversation that really intelligent people within the field of literary criticism and philosophy in general have been having. That's a conversation they've been having for the past 100 years, and for integral math to, like, step in and, like, give the common sense interpretation that we would all have without access to that conversation, it betrays the fact that he doesn't know anything about the subject or anything about the conversation that he's interjecting something into. He has a math degree. I don't know much about math. I don't step into a class and say something about differential equations or something that I can't support. This is the problem. He's stepping into a discourse which by his argument and by the logic that he's presented, he doesn't know anything about. He's making a statement. He's being a dick about it, and being really stubborn about it. Like, that's the problem. It's not even the internal logic of what he's saying. So in some way, like, what you're saying, the argument that you're presenting, I agree, that's a strong case against the claim he's making, or at least it's a case against the claim he's making. I think that there are any number of arguments that you can present about it. But what I take objection to in some way isn't the argument itself. It's that it's almost like somebody walking into a room, a lecture hall where somebody is giving, Stephen Hawking or Lawrence Krauss is giving some lecture, not to lay people, but some lecture to, like, a group of physicists, and I'm not putting us on this level, but the conversation is definitely at that level of specialization. Walking into that lecture hall where Lawrence Krauss is giving an address with very complex language and very complex, whatever, and saying, and giving like an Aristotelian argument about physics, like what's acceptable about that. There's a lack, there's an ignorance and also a boorish ignorance. It's not just ignorant, it's boorishly ignorant. And on top of that, it's like a lack of respect for the viability of an entire academic discourse. And an attempt to locate the principles of that discourse within his own specialization, which is apparently mathematics. The concept of progress kind of makes sense in mathematics. You can discover new things that work. You can prove theorems. You can gain ground in mathematics. Literary criticism doesn't work that way, and it doesn't operate with the principle that there is a right answer. And that's something that's an idea that I feel like he's likely importing from his field. So yeah, like this is a collection of problems, and this is what I take objection to, more so than the internal logic about it. That being the case, while, again, I feel like I'm rambling and repeating myself, but while the internal logic of what you're saying is sound and it works, I think in some way it doesn't address the point that I take the most issue with. And I guess I didn't really address it in my video either, but I'm addressing it now. So those are my thoughts on the issue. I hope the video finds you well, Mr. Norman. Hope to see you soon on a hangout or a conversation or something, and have a good day.